The Peak District is one of the least altered corners of England. Its stone circles have stood on the hillsides since the Bronze Age. Its packhorse lanes still run the routes drovers and miners cut centuries ago, and its old halls sit in the same fields they were built in, often with the same family's names still attached to them. That kind of permanence tends to hold on to its stories longer than most places do. Derbyshire's ghosts are not concentrated in one grand haunted house. They are spread across the whole landscape, on the lanes between villages, inside working farmhouses, and among stones that were already ancient when the first ghost story was told about them. One of the oldest concerns a lane between two villages, and a procession of 12 men who carry a coffin that is never for any of them. Longstone Lane runs between Great Longstone and Ashford in the Water, close to Thornbridge Hall, and for generations it has been known locally as Shady Lane. According to the tradition attached to it, 12 headless men can be seen there at dusk, carrying a coffin between them in complete silence. The coffin is empty. The local belief is that the space inside it is reserved for whoever happens to witness the procession, making the sighting itself an omen of the viewer's own death. No specific funeral, family, or death has ever been tied to the legend, and one version connects the empty coffin to a former lady of Thornbridge Hall, though that detail has never been confirmed either. What has stayed constant across more than a century of retellings is the shape of the story itself. 12 men, one coffin, and a warning that the watcher may be the one it was made for. A newer and stranger account comes from Dohole Lane near Ashover. On Christmas Eve in 2015, a driver and passenger travelling the lane saw a hooded, cloaked figure step into the road ahead of them. Both witnesses described it as transparent, yet distinct enough in the headlights that the driver braked, believing a real person had walked into their path. The figure crossed the lane at a steady pace, its face hidden beneath the hood, and vanished before it reached the hedgerow on the far side. No name has ever been attached to the figure, and nothing in the local record explains why it would appear on that particular lane, on that particular night. For the two people in the car, it lasted only a few seconds. They still talk about it. Nearby Swinger Lane has its own reputation, built from two separate encounters that later became treated as one story. A witness driving the lane at night saw a cyclist ahead of them, ordinary enough at first, until the rider took on a pale, indistinct quality and disappeared entirely before the car reached it. Later, after the same witness had parked a van along the lane, something began striking the vehicle's bodywork from outside. Hard enough to suggest a person hitting it deliberately. No one was visible near the van while the blows continued. Whether the cyclist and the banging are connected has never been established, but locally the two have been treated as a single Swinger Lane account ever since. The oldest of the road legends belongs to the countryside around Haddon Hall, one of the best preserved medieval and Tudor manor houses in England, virtually unchanged since the 1700s. Local tradition holds that a headless coachman still drives a carriage through the lanes near the estate, pulled by 6 horses that are also headless. No name has ever been given to the coachman, and the story offers no destination or reason for the journey. Only the image of a complete funeral coach, headless driver and headless team together, moving through roads that have carried real traffic for centuries before anyone thought to haunt them. Alfreton Hall in Ashover is a genuine 17th century house, remodelled several times over the following 2 centuries, and for real periods of its documented history, it operated as a youth hostel and later a residential home for the elderly. Its ghost story dates to 1956, when the wife of a pastor living there left the hall, telling locals she could no longer bear the haunting she had experienced inside it. The figure locals blamed was the 3rd wife of William Jessup, whose family are on record as genuine former owners of the estate. Her apparition was said to walk slowly across the grassy forecourt outside the hall, alone, before fading from view. Whether the pastor's wife saw an actual former resident of the house or simply absorbed a story that was already well established locally by 1956, the connection between a documented family name and a very specific, repeatable sighting is unusually solid for a Derbyshire haunting. Arbor Hall, now part of Mount St Mary's College, carries two separate reputations. The first is a female apparition, said to appear on nights of the full moon, and described inconsistently by witnesses, sometimes grey, sometimes blue, sometimes white, with no agreed identity ever settled on her. The second is a blood stain in an upper room, tied to a local story of a murdered priest, said to return no matter how many times it was scrubbed away or the floor replaced. That second story sits on genuinely solid historical ground. The Rhodes family, who owned the hall, were secretly Catholic during a period when sheltering a Jesuit priest was a capital offence, and the hall still contains a priest hole, a hidden room built specifically to conceal a priest from search parties during the era of Edmund Campion and other Jesuits who were captured and executed for their faith. Whether or not a priest actually died inside that specific room, the fear the story is built on was entirely real, and the physical hiding place survives to prove it. Alfreton House has a quieter but stranger reputation. In 2004, footsteps were heard moving along one of its corridors, each step landing with the sharp, hollow sound of a boot on bare floorboards, even though the corridor in question was fully carpeted at the time. No figure was ever seen. The haunting is said to date back to the 1940s, meaning the 2004 report was simply the most recent occurrence of something that had reportedly been heard in the building for 60 years, always the same sound, on the same kind of floor that no longer matched what was actually underfoot. Castle Hill in Bakewell, once a boarding house, is linked to a specific and unusually well-preserved local story. A butler named Jim Marlowe is said to have shot himself there one Friday night, according to the version of the story recorded in local ghost lore collections, to escape an unhappy marriage. Every Friday since, footsteps have reportedly begun near the pantry, the part of the house where a butler would have worked, and climbed the staircase toward the room where he died. No figure accompanies the sound, only the same route, walked on the same night of the week, for as long as anyone has been telling the story. St Margaret's Chapel in Alderwosleigh fell out of regular use once its congregation dwindled, and it has stood largely disused for decades. Since then, local people have reported the sound of singing coming from inside it, several voices together, carrying the rhythm of a hymn, along with the sound of the chapel bell ringing as though calling a congregation that no longer exists. No one has reported seeing a priest or worshippers entering the building, only hearing what continues from outside its locked doors. St Anselm's School in Bakewell holds one of the more specific and photographable stories in the county. During a social event at the school in the mid-20th century, a group of guests posed on the garden steps for a photograph taken by one of the masters. When the image was developed, a young boy in Victorian dress appeared standing among the group, close enough to look as though he belonged there. No one present remembered seeing him while the photograph was taken, and no one could identify him as a pupil or guest. The photograph itself became the story, since unlike most Derbyshire hauntings, this one left behind something you could actually hold and look at. Arbor Low, a Neolithic henge and stone circle on high ground above the White Peak, carries a reputation older than any hall or lane story in the county. Local folklore attaches a boggart to the site, a mischievous or malevolent spirit tied to a specific place, in the tradition common across northern England. Visitors who linger among the stones after dark are said to risk disturbing it, and some report a sense of being watched, or of movement, just beyond what they can see. The warning has outlived any specific account of what the boggart is supposed to have done, surviving simply as an instruction not to stay too long once the light has gone. Near Alport, a set of 4 standing stones, despite being known as the 9 stones, carry the alternate name of the Grey Ladies. According to local tradition, the stones come alive at midnight, or in another version at midday, and dance across the moor, while a separate strand of the folklore holds that fairies gather there by the hundred to dance among them. Both versions agree on one point. Whatever happens at that site, it happens to the stones themselves rather than to any single person who witnessed it, which sets the 9 stones apart from most Derbyshire hauntings built around a specific human ghost. High on Baslow Edge stands the Eagle Stone, and its folklore is older and stranger than the ghost story it is sometimes filed alongside. The name likely comes from Eagle, a figure in older regional folklore associated with throwing large rocks, though other versions connect it to eagles once nesting there. For generations, young men from Baslow were expected to climb the stone before a marriage proposal would be taken seriously by the woman in question, a genuine local custom recorded in 19th century folklore collections, not a modern invention. Layered onto that is the belief that the stone itself will slowly turn over when it hears a cockerel crow, a piece of folklore attached to several ancient stones across Derbyshire, not just this one. Whether anyone still climbs it for a marriage today, the stone remains exactly where generations of nervous suitors once tested themselves against it. Hassop Hall was once known for a large beech tree on its grounds, which local tradition claimed could speak. Anyone standing close enough was said to hear a whisper from its branches, repeating the name of whoever truly owned the estate, as though the tree itself held a claim to the truth that no deed or family dispute could overrule. The tree is gone now, but the story of a piece of the estate that knew its rightful owner better than the people living in it has outlasted the beech itself. 2 smaller sightings round out the wild places end of the county's folklore. On a hillside near Alderwasley, one witness described coming across a small figure, roughly 4 feet tall and wearing a green pointed hat, occupied entirely with tending the plants growing around it. The encounter lasted close to an hour before the witness left the figure still at work. They returned to the same hillside afterward, but never saw it again. Local tradition has long connected such small green-clad figures to fairies and nature spirits, and the Alderwasley account has been folded into that older belief. Near Barberbooth, meanwhile, a large black dog, roughly the size of a big collie, has been reported moving through the surrounding lanes. Unlike most phantom black dog stories in English folklore, which usually mark the animal as an omen of death, this one is said to belong to the fairies rather than to any ghost, placing it closer to a guardian than a warning. None of these stories share a single origin, a single century, or even a single kind of witness. A driver on Dohole Lane in 2015 and a family in an Alfreton corridor in 2004 have nothing in common except the county they happened in, and neither has anything in common with a Bronze Age stone circle that has carried its own warning since long before anyone wrote local history down. What ties them together is the land itself. The old roads in Derbyshire still follow the routes they always have. The stone circles remain on the same hills. The halls, chapels, and villages still stand largely where earlier generations knew them, which may be exactly why so many of these stories have never needed updating. The 12 men on Longstone Lane are still said to carry an empty coffin at dusk, and the tradition still holds that the space inside it is reserved for whoever sees them next. If you are aware of any locations in Derbyshire or the Peak District with tales attached, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Good night.